Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging and Diverse Developer Solicitation Informational Webinar. Please pause for questions as there will be specific um, uh, 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 slides in order to ask your questions. My name is Jerica Gomez, and I'm the Multifamily Development Specialist at Ramsey County. I am the project manager of the Emerging and Diverse Developers Program, and I run it alongside my amazing partners and NAO partners. That was no pun intended. I'm going to introduce Sydney, who is a part of NAO Partners. Sydney, would you mind talking about technical assistance offerings for the Emerging and Diverse Developer Solicitation? I know I'm putting you on the spot because I didn't ask you to do that.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Sydney. I am the program coordinator this year for the Emerging and Diverse Developers Program. I see some familiar names in the chat here. So we have technical assistance. The application is open now. You'll be working with NAO partners. We do ask, or we typically recommend that you have site control before you ask for technical assistance. And we have spots that are filled until they're filled. I don't know if I'm missing any other notes, Jerica, that I need to speak on.
Nope, that is good. So if you guys need technical assistance for your applications and you're not in the emerging and diverse developers cohort, please feel free to reach out to NAO Partners through the link that is provided on our website. I will go through that a little bit later. The emerging and diverse developers webpage has like Ramsey County has a landing page specifically for emerging and diverse developers, and I will bring you guys to that page a little bit later on. But without further ado, let's do some introductions. So I said I'm Jerica Gomez, and then we had Sydney, and then I'm going to ask my colleague Alexander to introduce himself as he will be capturing questions. Is that correct, Alexander? Are you here for that?
Yes, I am here to help take down questions to make sure that everything that people ask is recorded so we can keep track of it for the future. But my name is Alexander Johnson. I'm an intern with Jerica over at Ramsey County Community and Economic Development. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Alexander. So we just did some little housekeeping, and now let's get into the history of the Emerging and Diverse Developers Program. In 2022, the county began an engagement process to understand the landscape and needs for individuals wishing to come into the field of housing development. They hired a multi-development specialist. That was me. My name is Jerica Gomez, and we engaged 15 current providers of technical assistance for emerging developers. Through that engagement, we found that technical assistance without money attached to it was useless. I mean, not useless, but it didn't have as much use as it could. And thus, we created the Emerging and Diverse Developers Program. And through this program, we've been able to invest $13.1 million into emerging developers in the last 2 years. The history is that in 2022, we began kind of doing the foundational work. In 2023, we had our first inaugural year. In that year, we invested $3.1 million in just emerging and diverse developers program applicants. And then in 2024, we invested another $3.3 million. Now you're like, where did that $11.8 million come from? Because we have two housing development application processes within the program year at Ramsey County. That means that there are two different times for you to apply. This one specifically is just for emerging developers. So if you have more than 25 units of housing or more than 15,000 square feet of commercial space, then this program is not for you. But if you do not have that amount, then you are right, you're in the right spot. And we will continue moving forward in this program. Last year, the county received 27 applications from 25 different developers. 55% of the applications that came into this development solicitation were specifically from EDD cohort members. So the cohort is an opportunity for folks to get in on the ground floor and learn development 101. Kind of teaching you the ropes before you make the mistakes, and kind of giving you a network in order for you to be able to work with your peers. And I find that the Emerging and Diverse Developers Program cohort is really great. But if you were not in the Emerging and Diverse Developers cohort, even getting technical assistance from the most advanced technical assistance providers that I've been able to see throughout the landscape of technical assistance providing, you're in really good hands with NAO Partners. Of the awarded projects, 12 of the 27 projects were awarded. So that's a pretty high percentage considering just you getting money that's 20 years deferred. And then 55% of the awarded developers participated in the cohort program, and 88% of that awarded funding went to participants who were either through EDDTA or cohort. So being in that process kind of gives you a leg up and teaches you how to get into our solicitations. Now, if you're just getting here and you're like, what is a solicitation? Don't worry, I'm going to go through that. Does anybody have any questions of the history of the Emerging and Diverse Developers Program? Okay, I'm going to keep on moving forward. Remember, I will be pausing for questions, so please don't ask them unless I ask you for questions, just because it'll slow us down. But I am ahead of time. Let's get into talking about the solicitation. So Ramsey County hosts two different solicitations every calendar year for housing development specifically. That's our housing development solicitation, and this one, which is the Emerging and Diverse Developer Solicitation, otherwise known as the EDD solicitation. A solicitation is a funding opportunity. There are documents that make the government's requirements clear so that businesses, individuals, or entities can submit competitive applications. Municipalities, such as Ramsey County, acquire goods and services through this cost-effective, competitive, and fair process accessible to all businesses. Synonyms of solicitation are RFPs, RFQs, NOFOs if you're doing it on a federal level. What I'm saying basically is the county will tell you exactly what we want, or we'll tell you the gist of what we want, and then you just put your spin on the gist of what we want. So if I ask for spaghetti, do not give me a steak dinner just because I specifically asked you for spaghetti. I hope that makes sense. So this is our request. A solicitation is us requesting developers to give us a proposal in which reflects the values that our constituency have already said that they have and the desires that the county has to create affordable housing solutions for our constituents. Constituents just mean people who live in the jurisdiction, people who live in the city, people who live in the county. If I say words that are too jargony, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. I realize that I too am a cog in the machine. In an effort to create affordable housing options for our constituents, Ramsey County offers a competitive application process where developers are invited to apply for a duration of time using specific funding sources and guidelines to assist in the application process. It's usually online. It's an online application, and it is typically 4 weeks, but for the EDD solicitation, we extend it to 8. Available funding will have a variety of guidelines that applicants should be aware of, could include a specific funding source or funding source SIS, and it has geographic location limitations. So if you're here proposing a project that is outside of Ramsey County, I do want to let you know right now that unfortunately, this money is just for cities that lay within Ramsey County and excluding the city of North St. Paul. This solicitation was published on September 8th, 2025, and our responses are due by October 31st, Halloween at 4:30. The eligible uses of this solicitation are pre-development with ownership, new construction, acquisition with rehab, or rehab for buildings that you already own. Housing development that serves low to moderate income residents. If you haven't heard words like area median income or AMI, then I want you to make yourself very aware of those words. An area median income is actually designed by the IRS to find out what the median income of folks are in the area. And it's designed by region. And so it was decided by region. And so the area median income would be the 50% mark of where everybody, well, kind of like the 50% mark, excluding the outliers, where everybody kind of justly remains. And so when I talk about 30% of the area median income, that means people who make 30% of what the area median income was set at. So it's designed by family structure or family structure. And so how many people are in the family and how much income those folks are making. Um, Okay, I'm gonna get a little bit more into affordability later on, but I did want to clarify what area median income was. So we fund housing between 30 and 80% of area median income. So area median income would be 100%, or the median would be 100%. So think of that as 30 to 80% of the area median income is what we fund housing for. It's eligible in both St. Paul and suburban Ramsey County. And again, not North St. Paul. So if you're here and you have a project that you're thinking about proposing in North St. Paul, I want to let you know that because the North St. Paul HRA um, did not adopt our HRA, unfortunately, we cannot fund housing inside of North St. Paul. Any award that comes from Ramsey County that is over $25,000 is subject to prevailing wage. And if you do not know what prevailing wage is, I would suggest you do a little bit of research. It does require a certain level of oversight for construction and understanding fair wages for our constituents, the folks who work for you. Now, I get this question more often than not. Because we give loans between $100,000 and $500,000, oftentimes people are like, what if I find a project that's under 500,000 total development costs? Would you guys fund the full project, 20 years deferred? And I'm going to tell you right now, most likely not. The reason for that is because Ramsey County has a very small housing development staff, and so we do really need for your loans to be underwritten in some way whatsoever. So think of that as like uh, uh, getting a first mortgage, getting construction financing, getting general partner cash as well. Even if you had general partner cash, to be honest, you would still need to have some underwriting. So you would need a first mortgage or construction financing or a bridge loan or something in order to be able to leverage that your credit has been checked. Somebody has said, like, yes, I do support this project, and somebody else will have oversight on it. I always like to say, what will the news article say? If we fund this project and something happens and worst comes to worst, what will the news article say? And being able to mitigate risk is a way that Ramsey County is able to fund these types of projects. So again, no, we don't look at your credit, but we do expect somebody else to. These are the types of funding products that I would consider if I was looking to develop myself. One, pre-development funding. So different kinds of CDFIs, community development funding institutions, offer pre-development funding. It's very uncommon, but you might want to look into the CDFIs in your region that are offering pre-development funding. And if you have questions about pre-development funding, and you do not have site ownership, but you have site control, you are able to talk to our technical assistance providers about pre-development funding. If you are applying with site ownership, so you already own a plot of land or a parcel, but you're applying with that, then you can apply to us for pre-development funding. For us, our pre-development funding is a loan until you break ground, and then it becomes a grant. Pre-development funding covers all of your soft costs. So that's things like your architect, that's things like your surveying, anything that doesn't actually break ground. So think of that pre-development funding as a good opportunity to kind of get the groundwork done. And then construction bridge loans. Those are often loans that require a balloon type payment at the end of the term, but maybe only interest payments during the duration of the construction. This type of construction or this type of loan kind of provides a cushion as you are trying to develop land. You'll find out that there are a lot of confounding circumstances around around developing land. For me, for instance, one time I was developing a single family home, and there was limestone underneath my parcel. Now, the standard deviation of that limestone was 2 to 18, and I was like, "Oh, okay, so it's 18 feet." No, it was 18 feet with a 2 foot, it was 18 feet with, no, yeah, it doesn't matter. It was 20 feet with an 18 foot deviation. And I was like, oh, we're going to be good. After doing my due diligence, I found out we were not going to be good because I purchased that land and found out that there was rock 2 feet underneath the ground. So if I had hired a better due diligence in my soft cost period, I would have been able to find that out earlier, and it would have made it much easier for me or cheaper for me, or I probably wouldn't have bought that land at all, because having rock underneath increased my prices by like 45%, which is crazy. A first mortgage is exactly what it sounds like. A bank takes on the majority of the risk. For underwriting you, they underwrite you. You go through the underwriting process with a bank, a CDFI, or some other financier. General partner cash, owner equity deposit, down payment, that's money that you bring to the table either through an investor or through other equity that you have in other projects. Sales tax rebates, you can think of that as like the state housing tax credit. You can think of it as 4D, but understand that state housing tax credit will go into effect the first year, but things like 4D won't go into effect until the next year. And then energy rebates. All of these six different funding sources become your capital stack. And so these become your sources, and then all of the things that you need to do in order to accomplish your total development would be your costs. So your sources within your application should equal your costs. I went into this in this specific informational meeting today because I realized that this is so important for our emerging developers to know as you are going into the application, is that yes, Ramsey County does want to fund projects for affordable housing. No, we don't want to be the only funder. Does anyone have questions? And if you don't feel comfortable coming on computer or online, please feel free to type them in the chat. It is very important that if you have questions that you ask them, because these questions go at the end of our solicitation announcement and a frequently asked questions addendum, and they help so many people. So please feel free to ask your questions. There are no dumb questions. Either I'm boring or I'm doing a really good job because I don't see any questions. I'm gonna stay here for just another minute.
I think you're doing a really good job, but I feel like I just have to ask a question just to ask it. But can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
For the the bridge construction bridge, are there entities that provide that? I don't know if I missed that, but um, are there organizations that provide those kind of loans, the construction bridge?
Yes, I work for the government, so I'm unable to suggest that you go with a company of any sort whatsoever, because
Sure.
that is a conflict of interest. But
And
yes, there are companies that provide bridge loans in construction financing.
okay, maybe the way I would reframe that is, are regular lenders, do regular lenders provide that also, or is it just a specialized kind of um, loan?
Mm.
Because if I understood it correctly, that's basically in between, right? It's not just your total construction loan, it's a bridge in between to pay some of the contractors.
So that's more of a financing question and not specifically
Okay,
towards Ramsey County. So I
sure.
can't really answer it, but yes,
Okay,
finance financial organizations do provide construction type loans, or construction type loan products do exist through different financial organizations. I can't say that they come from regular financial organizations or more boutique financial organizations, but that is something that you can Google. You'll be
sure.
fine.
All right.
You'll find it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Hussein, for asking the question. Does anybody have Ramsey County specific questions like what is deferral, or what does it mean to have 0% interest? Any questions there? Okay, well, seeing none, I'm going to keep on moving forward. All right, so in the solicitation, we found through the Emerging and Diverse Developers Program that it was really important for emerging developers, especially because y'all might got other jobs. Y'all might be doing other things simultaneously while you're doing this application, to understand what you were being scored on. Your highest scoring criteria is strategic alignment. We're going to talk about the different ways that Ramsey County scores strategic alignment a little bit later on. That's 40 points of your application. Now, if you ever got a 60% in the class, you know that if you get 60%, you're failing that class. And just think of that as, or if you miss 40% of your points or get 60%, that's the same thing. You're failing that class. And I just want you to take that very seriously. Ramsey County takes it very seriously. We understood that emerging developers who were coming from the neighborhoods in which they wanted to develop understood the landscape of the needs of our constituents. They understood what people wanted because they were people. So it's very easy for them to have empathy, to be able to see their future tenants or their tenants as people and to create end products that were beneficial to the entire community. With that, we used our economic competitiveness and inclusion plan, our deeply affordable infrastructure report, as well as our equitable development framework in order to create a criteria for strategic alignment that benefited emerging developers because emerging developers often already know what the constituency wants. But when you're doing the application for strategic alignment, I want you to make sure that you reference the documents that I have put in your document library within Neighborly, which is the platform in which we host the application. So please be very cognizant. Please be aware. Please pay attention to strategic alignment because it is a heavily weighted portion of your application. Look at that big old blue box, okay? Go back. This blue box right here, that is your strategic alignment. So take it very seriously. And then affordability, 25% of your application will go towards affordability, and we'll talk exactly about what that affordability looks like. 25% will go towards financial feasibility. We'll talk about what financial feasibility is and what it isn't. And then we'll talk about organizational capacity, which is 10 points. Now, the quantitative analysis within this application is able to be self-scored. I'm going to say that again. Anything that is tied to dollars and cents, you can look at your application and score yourself for how well your project proposal will score in the affordability piece and in the financial feasibility piece. Organizational capacity is who's on your team. And the people on your team, are they experienced, knowing that you're an emerging developer, you may not have all of the experiences that are necessary for a full scope of work of a development. Who have you hired that does have that experience? And that's 10 points on your application. We decreased this from the last housing development solicitation because it is more important that you have higher strategic alignment, and your organizational capacity is important because it's 10 points, but it is still very manageable to get a project through the door and not have a full team. Affordability. Ramsey County looks at affordability across the landscape of the project proposed. So say you have a 4-unit building, and in that building, you have 130% AMI unit, 260% AMI units, and a 50% AMI unit. If we average those numbers, we have 180 over 3. We have a 60. I feel like that can't be. Yeah, over 4. 180 over 4. Now I'm jacked up. We have a 50% AMI score. Now, if you have a 50% AMI score, then you would score your building at 50% AMI. Can you include market rate units within your application? Yes. 100% AMI is market rate. You can include 100% AMI units within your building, but understand that we will be taking the full project over the amount of units, or the full project affordability from the amount of units. So if you have a market rate unit, you need to make sure then the rest of your units put you in an affordability that is going to score. Applications where rental limits average 50% AMI will receive the most points. Points will also be awarded to applicants where rental limits average 60% AMI. If your project averages over 80% AMI, it is not fundable through our solicitation process. All right, here go some important dates. On Halloween, your solicitation application is due. We will begin application review on the 4th of November. We'll begin underwriting review on the 20th. What does that look like? That means we're going to be calling into your financial institutions, maybe talking to you about what part of this funding that you have within your capital stack that's in your pro forma is committed and what is uncommitted, and what conversations are you having with the financial institutions in which you've used. What do those AMIs look like? What we're just going to be talking back and forth, kind of asking kind of questions. And let me be honest here. That is an opportunity that sometimes is not realized, because if competitive applications came in already and they had their applications ready to go with the information that we need inside of their workbook and the percentages inside of their workbook, then they're going to be poised to have those closing conversations that we would have to come back and ask you questions for. What does that mean? That means give me as much information as you can within your pro forma, and I'm going to talk about pro forma a little bit later. And then awardees will be alerted on the 15th of December, and we'll go to board on the 16th of December. We can start closing conversations as early as January 1st. If we're starting conversations on January 1st and your closing date is in November, if you close on that project and you are not awarded, that's not my business. I'm sorry. You closed on the project because you made a decision to close on the project. I cannot guarantee that you will be awarded through the solicitation process. It is competitive. I just want to make everybody aware that we understand that your earnest money, the money that you put down into these projects, is real. So please be very clear to your sellers that this is a competitive process, and everybody most likely will not be awarded. But what we can do in the interim of your application and that January 1st, when closing conversations can begin, is we can create letters of engagement in order to inform your full team that you are in a competitive process and that process will be awarded on these days. Ramsey County tries to be very transparent about these dates because we want you to be aware. If you want to take a screenshot of this, you can. This will be posted on the website, but I just want you to be very aware that if you're talking about closing conversations right now, Ramsey County cannot get into closing conversations for our awards until January 1st. Now, what's required for an EDD application? In order to not make this process onerous and to make it an entry-level kind of application process, we only require 5 things for an application. That's a multifamily workbook, otherwise called a pro forma. If you've not heard of a pro forma or a multifamily workbook and you have site control, I would make sure that you reach out to the technical assistance provider. This is a huge portion of your quantitative analysis, and your projects will not be scored without a complete multifamily workbook. You want to make sure you answer all of the application questions like you're asking me for $500,000. Okay? Ramsey County is not going to give you anything unless you make sure that you answer our questions succinctly. Don't ask me for $500,000 and give me $20 answers. I'm embarrassed when I'm inside of the room scoring your applications because I know you didn't. I want to make sure you know that this is a very serious application process. Take your time and be as succinct as possible. In no way, shape, or form should you be answering any of the application questions that require narrative with 1 sentence, or for some of them, even a paragraph is not substantial enough. So please make sure that you're understanding and answering the questions that are asked of you. An acknowledgement letter, that's just a letter saying that you acknowledge that everything that you wrote in your application is true. A lobby certification form, that's just saying that there was no quid pro quo between you and some politician or government employee. An attestation form saying that you don't own more than 25 housing units or 15,000 square feet of commercial space in Minnesota in the last 10 years. And that attestation form is actually not due until you are awarded. Now, these additional materials, these are not required for your project to go into scoring, but will affect your project's score. That's your project schedule, your market feasibility and analysis plan, your financial statements, explanation of funding sources and uses, commitment letters, committed funding, architectural drawings, sworn construction cost statement, bids and specifications, site improvement plans, project scope of work, photos of your project site, evidence of site control, tenant data, zoning and land use, documentation or approval. All of these 7 pieces of your additional materials will be covered if you provide a detailed multifamily workbook. Now, how can you tell if your multifamily workbook is detailed if you've never done one? Look at this list right here and check it against your completed multifamily workbook. From this workbook, can I determine financial analysis or underwriting? Can I see a detailed project budget? Are my sources equaling my uses? And vice versa, are my uses equaling my sources? Operating expense projections, 15-year pro forma projections, detailed housing unit breakdown, occupancy fill projection. These are all things that are determined from a detailed multifamily workbook. Now, if you haven't heard the word multifamily workbook or pro forma, please be advised that you should get technical assistance in order to help you through this workbook. Technical assistance could be provided to you if you have site control. Site control is not site ownership. A site control could be a letter of commitment, a letter of intent, a pending purchase agreement. It does not have to be executed. 30% of your additional information is in your workbook. So it is very, very important that you understand this workbook and that you know how to fill it out. The reason why I beat the workbook horse dead is because this is the 3rd year of this process, and I have received really good applications that did not have workbooks and did not go into scoring. And I know how much those people work super hard on their applications. And for them not to go to scoring, I'm sure it was really stressful because you put all that time in. And because you didn't have one piece of your application, 1/5 of your application, now your application doesn't get scored. Please be advised, you will not be able to alter your workbook specifics after October 31st. So put in your workbook as much information as you can. You may be able to like move some things around as far as like percentage or APR, say your financing is not set, but you won't be able to change your AMI of your units. You won't, or area median income of your units. You won't be able to change the project proposal of your units because that is what your project was scored upon. Thus, that is what your project would be awarded from. And if your project application shifts drastically between application close, review, and award, you may not get the award simply because your project scope has changed so drastically. That was not the project scope that was scored. I'm going to pause for questions there because I think I went through a lot. No? Okay, I'm good. All right. So Ramsey County aims to address racial barriers in real estate, providing emerging and diverse developers with a fair and equal opportunity to thrive in early stages of the development process. I've talked about the Economic Competitiveness and Inclusion Plan, the Equitable Development Framework, and the Deeply Affordable Housing Initiative Report. I'm just going to open up our website so you can see. Sorry, one second. just need to move this. There we go. I'm going to open up our Economic and Competitiveness and Inclusion Plan initiative. So if you come here to the economic competitiveness, you can literally just press or type in economic competitiveness and inclusion plan in Google, or you can go into the Neighborly software, which we'll go over a little bit later here, and it's going to be inside of our document library. So the Economic Competitiveness and Inclusion Plan has so many great gems. This is what it looks like. This plan was designed by our constituents to tell us what exactly they wanted from the county and how we could do a better job of distributing wealth through our constituency. Be very aware of this plan, especially the strategies. These strategies should be referenced in your application if you want to score highly in strategic analysis. You will not score highly if you do not reference the ECI plan and specifically what in the ECI plan you are responding to. Now, if you go back to this Economic Competitiveness and Inclusion Plan, you can also see the Deeply Affordable Housing Initiative. You want to read this, you want to understand it, especially if you plan on providing housing with deep affordability, like for instance, 30% AMI. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but the Equitable Development Framework is also here. So you want to open up our Equitable Development Framework, which is on this website, but I don't want to look for it because it's going to take me too long. It's also inside of your the document library inside of Neighborly. I'll push this back down and open back up our PowerPoint. It's so important that you reference. Oh,
Jerica, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think we're only seeing your PowerPoint page. I don't think we're seeing if you're
oh, thank you so much, Tanisha. Let me stop sharing. Thank you, Tanisha. You guys didn't see the website at all? Y'all didn't feel like y'all could talk up? Is it me? Am I mean? Okay, 1 second. I'm gonna share my screen again. I'm gonna escape out of this. Do you guys see the Deeply Affordable Housing Infrastructure Initiative?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Next time I'm not seeing the right thing, please tell me. I love constructive criticism. It's my favorite thing. So I talked about the ECI plan, and that's this, you guys. It looks just like this. You want to make sure that you reference the ECI plan. It's a really good plan. And we've been working with this plan for about 4.5 years. We're going to be updating this plan this year with the progress that we've made. But the Emerging and Diverse Developers Program is directly proportional, or is directly like it's a direct response to the ECI plan. So if you don't reference the ECI plan in your application, you may not score high in strategic analysis. And then the Affordable Housing Investments Report, especially if you're going to be providing deep affordability, you want to be able to reference this report and talk about what our constituents have asked for. And these are all within your document library on Neighborly. Some of the specific strategies that the EDD program answer to within the ECI plan are strategy 1 and 2, and that's ensure place-based inclusion, create resilient and equitable communities, and foster economic competitiveness, innovation, and transformation within our neighborhoods. This also speaks to 2 of county's goals, which are different from our strategies. There are some language that you want to be able to reference and in some lexicon that you're going to have to learn. These are not long plans. These are not drawn out. They're very succinct. So you want to be able to read them and understand them, and then be able to replicate them for your applications. Cultivate economic prosperity and invest in neighborhoods with concentrated financial poverty. Enhance access to opportunity and mobility for all residents and businesses. All right, so now that you know everything about the application process, we've talked about the timeline, we've talked about the background, we've talked about how we score strategic alignment as well as the quantitative analysis for the quantitative analysis and qualitative, both of them, for your application. Let's go into the participant portal. Now, everybody can see my screen, is that correct?
You can
Yes.
see
the internet?
Yep.
All right. So I am going to go to the Emerging and Diverse Developers Program webpage. Thank you, Brandon. So here we're at the EDD webpage. It's www.ramseycounty.us/EDD. Alexander, would you mind putting that in the chat?
Yes, I will.
Thank you so much. This is our landing page for all things EDD. This is where you find the application. So this goes through the background, blah, 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 blah. You guys have already heard all of that, but you see this blue button that says apply? You will hit that and it will open up our Neighborly website. Mine is going to be logged in. I was hoping that wasn't going to be logged in. Sorry. See, you may have to create an application or you may have to create a login, but in order to create a login, I was thinking I was going to be able to do it, but in order to create a login, you just want to put in your information and make sure your email is an email that you can respond to because they're going to send you a verification code. Put that verification code in, and then ta-da, you have a profile with Ramsey County's Neighborly. Now, in order to apply to our solicitation, you'll scroll down to, because we have two solicitations open right now. We have a critical corridors application that's open, which has different uses for the Emerging and Diverse Developers Program. So you'll see the Emerging and Diverse Developers Program here. Does everybody see that? You see that this application is due on October 31st at 4:30. Come here and start your application. In order to start your application, you're just going to put your organization name. I'm not going to start one, you guys. There's too many tests already. You put your organization name and then your project name. And then you go in to start application. Once you start your application, it's going to ask you a series of questions. Let's see if I can log into Ramsey County too. Here goes the program overview. I would suggest you read this. The requirements, it's going to go through those 5 things that I talked about, as well as what soft costs are. It's going to go through that list of materials that are supplementary, not required, but do go into scoring. Here goes your document library. That's where your solicitation notice, your equitable development framework, your engagement summary report, your economic competitiveness and inclusion plan, as well as our architectural guidelines will exist. If you plan on any new development, please make sure that you review the architectural guidelines. There are some materials that Ramsey County does not allow, and so I want you to be really aware before you propose a project with a material that we do not allow and thus will not fund. Put in your applicant information, project info. I should scroll down so you guys can see. These are some pretty robust pieces. Now the applicant information, of course, that's demographic information. That's your information. It's not that much. But when you get into project information, we're just going to describe the project as it is. This is a 4-unit building, or if you're making it into a 5-unit, whatever you're designing the building as its end unit, like whatever the end use is, that's what you would put in the project information. So not what you're buying it as, but as you want it to be funded, okay? And then your organizational capacity, that's who's on your team. Project contacts, that's the people who are on your team also. So organizational capacity, this is more about experience. Project context is like who these people is. Now, livability. This is your strategic alignment scoring mechanism. Now, I don't know how I could beat this dead horse anymore. You want to be very, very descriptive. You want to be succinct, but you also want to be descriptive on what it is that you are proposing and why what you are proposing will align with Ramsey County's strategic priorities and goals. Your required material. There are 5 required materials, but if you're putting anything into this application, it should either fit in these pieces, and if you have to, if there's something that is not listed here, please feel free to add your additional supporting documentation in the bottom. This lobbying certificate just says again that nobody is giving you any quid pro quo, and this acknowledgement will again say that what you're saying in your application is true. Now, just for one moment, I want to go through oh goodness. Oh, yeah, I know I want to go through the multifamily workbook, which is in your required materials. Goodness, where is it? Application forms. Is it here? I wanted to open a multifamily workbook, but I don't see it. Let me go through and make sure that this is in here, but a multifamily workbook is a very succinct workbook that covers a lot of the information within your application. I will record a video of me going through the multifamily workbook after we get off of here. But in the meantime, because I'm running a little bit over, do you guys have any questions?
Jerica.
Yes.
Hi, this is James. I have a question that is, I think, more related to the pre-development application. Um, how similar or different is that than this? I think that's the priority for me right now.
Yeah, so the pre-development application would include everything because once you break ground on the application, then it becomes a grant. So you have to have a project scope, for instance, so that we know what you plan, what your end user is, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I guess I'm wondering if we need to do like the workbook and all that kind of stuff just for pre-development because we're still trying to figure out the project. We have an idea of what we're trying to do, but we're looking for support in sort of figuring that out. And
Understood,
that's what I was,
understood. I
yeah.
would develop, so because a multifamily workbook is required for all applications, I would develop an aspirational multifamily workbook and maybe get some of those costs locked in. I have personal knowledge of your expertise, and I think that you could do it just kind of guesstimating your multifamily workbook, even if you're just doing pre-development costs. Because what should essentially happen here, James, is that you apply for the pre-development funding, you get awarded the pre-development funding, and then you come in to the next solicitation with the project as you proposed it.
Right. Yeah.
Because we need to know what you're going to do later so that we can be like, that is something that we want. One year, somebody proposed that they wanted to do like soil evaluation, but there was not any kind of like end product. And that is why we decided that we would require a multifamily workbook for pre-development costs because, okay, once we find out that the soil is good, what housing is going to exist there?
Yep, no, that makes sense. I just trying to understand sort of the order of operations, and I feel like trying to get the pre-development situation rolling is imperative to then being able to have a more robust, application for the full project.
I completely understand what you're saying. Just do it aspirationally, in the meantime, and once we get to that full project application for the next award, just kind of make sure the project scope follows what you proposed initially.
Okay.
And my teammate sent me a multifamily workbook because he's amazing. Thank you, Alexander. So I should be able to go over that with you guys. Anybody have questions in the interim?
Just a heads up, Jericho, it looks like it, even though it was listed as being the blank one, it does have information in from an application from the last solicitation. So I don't know if that affects whether you want to open it or not, but just wanted to let you know before you open it on your screen.
Thank you. I think it'll be fine. Let me just.
Hey, Jerica, I have two questions.
Yeah.
One, um, are are we able to see the full applications of other people who were successfully awarded or no?
No, you're not able to see that, Felipa.
Okay. And then for the some of the required documents that you have, like the lobbying certification form, is that uh, on the EDD, the Ramsey County website that you guys linked? That's where
It'll
we'll be
be
able to
inside of
download
your, it'll be inside of your document. So you'll be able to
that?
just pull that from a template.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, you guys, I'm just clearing out something so that we can look at a summary page of a multifamily workbook. Please feel free to keep your questions coming. It is very important that your questions are asked here or within this next 4 days so that I can put them inside of my application. You may feel like your question is not important, but believe me, it is so important, and it helps so many people when you ask those questions so that they can go inside the frequently asked questions addendum because I cannot answer questions due to conflict of interest. Oh man, I can't delete it. It won't allow me to. All right. Mm. Okay, so we're looking at a multifamily workbook. We're looking at the summary page. There are several different pages here, as you can see. But let's look at the summary page, which goes over a full summary of what your project is proposing. For this project, they're proposing an 18-unit building with 18 two-bedrooms, three of which are at 30% AMI or deeply affordable, and 15 of which are at 50% AMI. The full acquisition or refinance is $2.4 million. The rehab costs for this building are $131,400. The contingency that this developer has estimated is 5,750. Their professional fees or soft costs are going to be 15,500. Their developer fees are going to be $20,000. A developer fee is how you get paid. Their financing costs are going to be 11,650. That's what they have to pay their bank in order for them to finance them. Their total mortgageable costs are $2,639,300. Their reserves that they have for all of their units is $60,645. And then their total development cost comes out to $2.7 million or 2.699945. All right. In this deal, their sources, or that six picture slide I showed you guys earlier, and I'm going over, but so feel free to not stay here if you don't want to, are $1.3 million in first mortgage. Their deferred loan request for Ramsey County in our housing development solicitation was $791,945. Please be advised, the ceiling for this solicitation is $500,000. And then their developer equity was $600,000. Their total sources are 2.6 million or 2.699945, which is the exact amount as their costs. Sources equal use. Sources equal use. Your sources should equal your use. I'm going to say it over and over again because every time I open a workbook where the sources don't equal the uses, I know that somebody made a mistake somewhere. So if these pieces on the capital funding sources or your capital stack are committed, then you would put a note here like saying that these funds are committed. If they're not committed yet, say that they're in progress, and thus forth. There's a note space on your workbook. This is a different workbook, but it looks very similar to this. All right, I'm over time, but if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Please also feel free to send me an email if you want to just talk directly to me and you're scared to put it in the chat here. You don't want nobody to know who you are. That's fine too. And I will make sure to answer those questions and get them back to you.